And here's what's happening today, Thursday, March 24th, 1864. The Civil War continues on several fronts with no end in sight. President Lincoln says he's confident that Ulysses S. Grant, whom he appointed earlier this month to lead the Union troops, will fight tooth and nail to win the war against the Confederate Army.
Closer to home, and speaking of teeth, 6 area dentists are about to meet to officially form a professional association in Massachusetts. You know, if those dentists are looking for a catchy name, they could always call themselves Yankee Dental. You know, after all of us proud Yankees up here in the north.
That makes about as much sense to me as Yankee Doodle. I'll bet you this Lincoln $5 bill that Yankee Dental is a name that will never catch on. Next, you'll be saying that these Yankee Dental group of dentists will someday be parading around somewhere in Boston each winter wearing red jackets like those dastardly British redcoats did before we threw them out of here. And I suppose you'll be telling me that this organization will eventually settle in some Massachusetts borough with that dreaded word South in its name.
Anyway, reporter Bartholomew Wheatley fills us in from the Tremont Temple in downtown Boston, where this meeting is about to take place.
I'm outside Converse Hall at the Tremont Temple. This is where Abraham Lincoln spoke in 1848 as a 39-year-old freshman congressman, and where the Emancipation Proclamation was first read in Boston on January 1st of last year. And it's in a meeting room in this same building where history is about to be made again. Dental history, that is. That's because 6 dentists have gathered to vote on the creation of a new statewide association. Hopefully, the process to form this organization won't be like pulling teeth. Get it? Pulling teeth.
Thank you, Bartholomew. I'll take over from here to report the real story from that meeting in 1864 that gave birth to the Massachusetts Dental Society. Inspired by the vision of these dentists, the Massachusetts Dental Society officially became a professional association that evening at the Tremont Temple in Boston. This followed 2 other meetings held earlier in the month. Originally founded as the Massachusetts Dental Association, the name was changed to Society in 1865 when the organization was officially incorporated. That's because, by state law at that time, to be called an association, a group needed to have assets totaling $5,000. This one had less than 100. But despite the newly formed MDS not having deep pockets, dentistry in Massachusetts was establishing deep roots, some of which were planted 18 years earlier and just a few blocks from the Tremont Temple. On October 16, 1846, a dentist named William T.G. Morton demonstrated the first public use of ether in a surgical procedure at Massachusetts General Hospital. Dr. Morton administering this form of anesthesia during an operation clearly opened a lot of eyes to the great potential of the dental profession.
What he did was so monumental, went around the world, but that was another contribution to our profession that I feel has to be revered.
2 years after the MDS began, the National Dental Association, which later became the American Dental Association, came to Boston for its annual meeting. In 1867, the Harvard Dental School was started, followed the next year by the Boston Dental College, later to be known as Tufts School of Dental Medicine. By the turn of the century, the MDS had more than 700 members who practiced dentistry in a very basic way, even with the advent of electricity. For several decades, including its 50th anniversary year, the Massachusetts Dental Society was often housed in the dental office of whoever happened to be president that year. But in 1936, the MDS leased permanent space at 106 Marlborough Street in Boston's Back Bay. There, the Society established its first official home. In 1946, and now with 2,500 members, the Society was on the move again, purchasing a space just a few blocks away at 227 Commonwealth Avenue. 6 years later, the MDS produced its first quarterly journal to keep members updated on the latest clinical developments in the profession. In 1963, the Boston University School of Dental Medicine was founded, and the very next year, in 1964, the MDS celebrated its centennial, which included the publication of a book by Dr. Duranian, recounting the organization's first 100 years. The anniversary year culminated with a formal dinner dance in Boston. Growing in members and programs, the MDS decided that it needed to relocate again in 1967, a year that may be better known for the Boston Red Sox winning the American League pennant. A big part of the success of the Sox that year was carried on the arm of a young pitcher named Jim Lonborg. After retiring from baseball, Gentleman Jim, as he was called, would later be known as Dr. Jim, a dentist and member of the MDS. And like the Red Sox in 1967, things were also looking up that year for the MDS, way up. The MDS became occupants on the 43rd floor of the Prudential Building. Its new home gave the society a panoramic view high above Boston, but this location was also significant for what would happen some 9 years later and 43 floors below. It was there at the adjacent Sheraton Boston Hotel in Heinz Auditorium on January 11, 1976, that 7,090 dental professionals, including 2,542 dentists, participated on the ground floor of dental history in Massachusetts by attending the first Yankee Dental Congress. Although Yankee was created through the hard work of many volunteers, most of the credit was given to Dr. William McKenna for being the vision behind the event. It was indeed fitting that in the same year the United States celebrated the 200th anniversary of its birth, the Massachusetts Dental Society would give birth to one of the premier dental conferences in the United States. Michelle Curtin, who joined the MDS just before the third Yankee, recalls those early years.
It was a very small meeting at that time. It had about 6,000 people. And we had really only 3 staff members for the first 10 years. And we really had to really count on those volunteers to do the Yankee.
As the MDS grew in the 70s and 80s, so too did Yankee, firmly establishing a national reputation. The meeting became well-known and also attracted the well-known. Today, YDC hosts more than 27,000 attendees and offers hundreds of courses and exhibits. But what makes Yankee unique from other dental meetings is the hundreds of volunteers, clearly identifiable by their distinctive red jackets, who donate their time to the event each year. Yankee would stay at its Prudential Center location for the next 32 years before moving in 2008 to its present home at the Boston Convention and Exhibition Center in South Boston. Meanwhile, just as Yankee was beginning, the MDS's time located in Boston was coming to an end. In 1977, the Society headed west to an office park at 36 Washington Street in Wellesley. It was during this time that the Society, led by Executive Secretary and dentist Dr. Alexander Bud Maitland, became more involved in community activities. When Dr. Maitland retired in 1982, he was succeeded by the Society's first executive director, Matthew Boylan, who would oversee the MDS's continued growth. In 1986, the MDS moved from Wellesley to its own building at 83 Speen Street in Natick. And it was during the late 80s and early 90s when the MDS became not just a professional association, but also a thriving business, as Mr. Boylan explains in this interview from 1996.
The Society initially, when I arrived, was not automated. They were in rented facilities. There was much, I'm not sure what to say, much correction and automation that needed to be managed in a very short time period if we were going to get up and running as a business.
One of those businesses the MDS created was in 1992 with the founding of the Eastern Dentists Insurance Company, headed by Dr. Charles Hapcook, who describes some of the process involved.
It took us a year and a half from 1990 until 1992 to negotiate the money, hire consultants to form the company, and get the company together and licensed to do business. I learned along the way from our consultants, such companies as Towers Watson and Arthur Anderson, that how these insurance companies really function.
4 years after the founding of EDIC, Matt Boylan, who was so instrumental in its creation, died after a long illness. In 1997, a dentist, Dr. James Bramson, was hired as his successor. With the MDS continuing to expand in staff and programs, including the creation of MDS Insurance Services, one of Dr. Bramson's first tasks was to plan yet another MDS move. Only this time, instead of buying an existing building, the Society constructed one on Willow Street in Southborough, As he explains, the need to relocate was critical.
Mass Dental was growing significantly, the Yankee meeting was growing a lot, and what we didn't have there is a real professional look and feel. We also didn't have room for the growing Yankee resources, and lastly, we just didn't have any facility on site there for us to hold our meetings, and we had an awful lot of those. There was tons of regular Yankee meetings during the week as well as the various board meetings, so it was imperative for us to look for something that had a little bit better space.
Finished in late 1999, the building took more than a year to complete, but some might say construction went rather quickly. The 1990s also saw the emergence of social responsibility on the part of dentists through the Committee to Prevent Abuse and Neglect and the MDS's participation in the Mason's CHIP program. MDS members also began to be recognized for their many contributions to the organization as volunteer heroes. In 1999, the Society took its commitment to community one step further by creating the MDS Foundation, which supports organizations providing access to care for populations in need, and, years later, would even operate its own mobile dental van. In 2001, James Bramson left the MDS to become executive director of the American Dental Association. His successor was Dr. Robert Boos, who would lead the society into the new millennium by introducing a wide range of innovative programs. Today, the Massachusetts Dental Society offers its nearly 5,000 members many opportunities to make significant contributions to organized dentistry, and has been recognized nationally for its many programs. These include the MDS Leadership Institute, the Guest Board Member Program, the Boston Collaborative Group, and the Women's Leadership Group. In 2007, the Society elected its first woman president, and 5 years later, its second woman president.
Brought to you by the 4,500 dentists of the Massachusetts Dental Society, who believe a healthy smile is music to your mouth.
To position the MDS as the state's leader in oral health, the Society has produced many award-winning media campaigns, bringing greater attention to the organization and dental profession. These activities, combined with a variety of community outreach initiatives and the Society's call to action launched in 2009, have contributed to educating MDS members and the public, while giving mouths a much-needed voice. A recent example of this was the MDS co-sponsoring a regional health policy forum to discuss healthcare reform and its future impact on dentistry. Dr. Boos believes having dentists maintain a strong presence on many issues is important.
It's probably the most important now than ever, because as leaders and leaders in organized dentistry, we have to lead from the front, not from the rear. So we have to be established as somebody, as the go-to person, as the provider of care, the most knowledgeable, and therefore we have to be in the middle of the changes.
One way members advocate for the profession each year is by participating in Beacon Hill Day, giving them the opportunity for face-to-face meetings with their elected officials. Coincidentally, the State House is located just steps from the Tremont Temple, where the 150-year story of the Massachusetts Dental Society all began. Little did its founders envision in March of 1864 what their organization would become today. And just as it takes a keen sense of vision to shape the future, sometimes you need to use only your imagination to see what could have existed in the past.
Well, Prudence, that's a lot of dental history to chew on, isn't it?
You've said a mouthful, all right, Ezra. And see, the Massachusetts Dental Society did eventually use the name Yankee Dental for their big meeting. And did you notice that the dentists are wearing red jackets?
And a good color choice, too, I might add. It's a shame that color TV won't be invented for another 100 years, or I'd be tempted to wear a red jacket myself. Anyway, here's your $5. I guess I should have bet you a Lincoln penny instead.
Thanks, Ezra. This $5 will certainly come in handy. I now have enough to do my entire week's food shopping, plus a little bit left over at the end.
Prudence, has anyone ever told you you're living in the past? But I'll be a good sport and admit you knocked my socks off about that other thing. The name Yankee Dental did become a winner. You might say those dentists really hit it out of the park with that one. I guess the great citizens of Massachusetts really are fans of any team with the name Yankee in it.
Anyway, congratulations to all of our friends at the Massachusetts Dental Society for 150 great years of service to the dental profession and to the public.
Frankly, I don't think they look a day over 100.
And since you've probably heard enough from us by now, why don't we turn it over to a few other people who have something they'd like to say.
From one great institution to another, happy 150th birthday, Massachusetts Dental Society.
Congratulations, Massachusetts Dental Society, on your 150th anniversary. That's a lot to smile about.
That's a lot of teeth to care for in 150 years, Mass Dental.
I'm here to bring greetings from the ADA to help you celebrate your 150th anniversary. What a great milestone. Congratulations all.
Happy 150th birthday, Massachusetts Dental Society.
150 years, that is a lot to smile about, Massachusetts Dental Society.
It's the Massachusetts Dental Society. A century plus 50 years an anniversary. Association membership.